Cartoon characters so annoying that they didn't just ruin scenes, they ruined entire episodes. And no, I'm not talking about villains, I'm talking about characters the show wanted you to love, but we all ended up hating. At first, they're nice and funny, and 3 Doritos later, you're already asking yourself, why the heck do they still exist? So today we're going to talk about the most hated characters in animation, the ones who ruined relationships, final episodes, and even entire series. And what if your favorite shows up here? I'm sorry, but they probably deserve it. Blossom, from the reboot of the Powerpuff Girls, is the perfect example of how to ruin a character that already worked, the original Blossom. She was a 100% leader, intelligent, firm, and balanced. She knew how to lead without being a jerk, and how to think without feeling superior. The new one? No, the new one is an insufferable boss, the kind nobody wants at work. This Blossom doesn't lead, she just gives orders. As a boss, she became the annoying know-it-all of the team, correcting everything and making all the decisions, even if nobody asked her to. Every episode feels like an office meeting where she thinks she's always right, and the worst part is that the show validates her, as if being the smart one automatically made you untouchable. There's no teamwork, there are only orders. And if Bonbon's sermons no longer inspire you, this girl will stress you out because she confuses intelligence with authority and authority with superiority. And of course, when something goes wrong, it's never her fault because she already warned about it. Such a narcissist. The bonbon of the reboot. She's not a strong leader. She's a control freak with a chief executive officer complex. And let it be clear, intelligence without empathy is useless. Panda friends. And from there we move on to another character who always divides opinions, Panda from the Loud House. Panda isn't hated for being an otaku or for using social media or for being sensitive. Panda is hated because he's a simp with an influencer complex. His whole universe revolves around validation. He needs likes, he needs approval, and he needs the world to tell him he's special, even if it's a lie. Every time he helps, according to him, he doesn't do it out of kindness. He does it for applause. Panda doesn't want to do good. He wants to be seen doing it. He wants the recognition, the pat on the back, the nice comment, and if there are no witnesses, it doesn't count. The best example is the episode about the diet where the brothers have to eat what matches their nature. Pardo suffers, Polar suffers, but Panda brags that he can do it, he judges them, criticizes them, and feels really good, really superior. And of course, in the end, we found out that Mr. Discipline was hiding to eat whatever he wanted while pretending to have willpower just to look good on social media. I mean, a professional hypocrite, but with Wi-Fi. And that's what makes him so annoying. Panda isn't bad, but he's exasperating. He represents that ugly side of wanting to be loved on the internet at any cost, even lying and stepping over those next to you. And he's not a villain, but he's that friend you don't invite because he turns everything into a selfie. Angelica. Let's continue with Angelica Pickles from Rugrats. Angelica is hated because she's a bully with an unlimited budget. She's not just rude, she's a professional manipulator who lies, threatens, and traumatizes babies, and she does it knowing nothing will happen to her, because of course, adults always believe her. Always. Angelica doesn't win because she's smart. She wins because the system is always on her side. She ruins games, breaks up friendships, and leaves half the daycare in tears, and in the end she walks away like nothing happened, with her bow perfectly in place and her ego inflated. She works as a villain. Yes, but watching her episode after episode is frustrating because you know exactly what's going to happen. She's going to ruin everything, she's going to get away with it, and nobody is going to learn anything at all. She's living proof that karma sometimes takes long vacations. Mabel, now let's get into sensitive territory. Mabel Pines didn't start out being hated, she started out as the cute girl with endless energy. The problem is that the show turned her into an indestructible bulletproof bubble. Mabel can throw monumental tantrums, manipulate half the town, and put her whims above the well-being of. And the script is always rushing to cover her up with a "Here comes Kobijita" saying, "It's okay, it's Kobijita." Mad Pogame characters. Like Mad makes mistakes. They hit rock bottom and change. She makes mistakes. She stays the same because no one, absolutely no one, stays the same because no one. The Gesture, on the contrary, often blames him for things that aren't even under his control, and the most blatant example is the weird Mageddon. The literal apocalypse happens because Mabel didn't want summer to end, a selfish wish with diabolical consequences, the world on the brink of collapse. And in the end, as always, Mabel wins. It's not that Mabel is the devil, but the absurd protection the script gives her makes her exasperating. Because no matter how big the disaster she causes, Mabel always lands on her feet, smiling, while everyone else picks up the pieces. Margarita. Then we have one of the most toxic romantic dramas on Cartoon Network, Margarita, from regular show Margarita. She comes in as Mordecai's love interest, and from the start it's an emotional roller coaster. Really messed up, she rejects him, gives him hope, rejects him again, goes to college and leaves Mordecai emotionally devastated. He tries to move on with his life, gets a girlfriend, and it seems like he's finally going to move forward. And surprise, Margarita comes back like nothing happened, fully knowing that the guy is already in a relationship, and she pulls away. She has a bit of emotional decency. Of course she doesn't stay. She gets attention, confuses him, lets herself be loved, sees him, really shakes things up for him, and when everything blows up and there are consequences, she pulls the classic, "Actually, I'm confused." And the result? Mordecai loses He ends up looking like the villain, breaking everything around him. And Margarita leaves calmly, without a hint of guilt, as if she hadn't emotionally set off Mordecai. And look, Mordecai isn't a saint, he's a simp who graduated with honors. But Margarita knows this weakness and uses it when it suits her, never taking any responsibility. It's basically emotional manipulation, with a bow and a little kiss. Rosa, Chloe, Carmichael. Chloe doesn't make it to the series. Chloe bursts in, like an Excel error that nobody knew how to delete. She appears in the last season, when the show was already in a coma, and on top of that, she shows up being perfect, brilliant, loved, talented, smiling, with a shining life. She's carefree and without a single real problem. But of course, magically, she needs fairies. Compared to Timmy, who has been exploited, punished, ignored, and traumatized since he was 5 years old, Chloe is basically a millionaire with a ton of dopamine. She has no arc, no growth, no flaws. Seriously, she never makes mistakes, never loses, never learns anything because she doesn't need to. She's such an obvious Mary Sue that she doesn't even try to hide it. Everything she touches, she does better than Timmy. Everyone loves her, everyone understands her, everyone celebrates her, and the main character ends up looking like a nuisance in his own show. And if that wasn't enough, there's also Grillo's insult. They forced Timmy to share Cosmo and Wanda with her, breaking rules that the show itself had respected for years. Everything went down the drain just to bring in the perfect girl, but many fans know that the real ending was channel chasers. Everything that came after is just total garbage. Chloe isn't a character. She's the final symptom of a show that no longer knew who it was or who it wanted to tell its story to. And Timmy, poor Timmy, survived villains, teachers, magical rules, and even the Pixies, but he didn't make it. To Chloe, Carmichael, Caillou. And now let's move on to one that people try to defeat with lukewarm speeches, but deep down, they know he's unbearable. Caillou isn't hated because he's a kid. Caillou is hated because he's the social experiment. What happens if you never teach someone anything? The kid cries, screams, throws tantrums, emotionally manipulates adults, and makes a scene. End of the world level, and what does he get? Attention, understanding, and rewards? Never a limit. The whole universe adjusts to his tantrum as if it were a law of nature. The really annoying thing is that the show tries to sell this to you as educational, telling you to learn values, while the main character does exactly the opposite and ends up winning. Caillou learns that crying works, that screaming works, that playing the victim works, and that if you insist enough, adults become your pets. It's not exaggerated fantasy like other cartoons, it's an uncomfortable reality we've all seen at the supermarket, on a plane, or at someone else's house. And that's why it bothers people so much, because it's not a cartoon. This is real, man. It even happens with your 5-year-old cousin, and you know it. Caillou doesn't grow, doesn't change, and definitely doesn't get any better. He stays just as unbearable episode after episode, protected by parents who seem even more brainless than Caillou, and that's where the real problem lies. The show insists that Caillou is a good example, when in reality, he's the reason why many adults say, "No way, I don't want kids." He's not a villain, and he's not a monster. He's worse. He's a kid who was never taught that the world doesn't revolve around him. And that, my friends, is scarier than any horror cartoon. Patrick Star, yes, I know, calm down little buddy, before you start crying, can we clear something up? Patrick used to be likable. He was the lovable fool, the one who didn't even know what day it was, but he had a good heart. The problem is that over time, Patrick stopped being innocent and changed, but for the worse. He went from being a noble fool to a functionally dangerous idiot, because Patrick isn't just dumb, he's selfish and irresponsible. And let's be honest, he's really mean to SpongeBob, who literally gives him everything: house, food, his pet, and even a family. And even so, Patrick manages to ruin his life and play the victim. And the worst part is that he always ends up winning, like a nuclear cockroach. The joke used to be that Patrick didn't understand anything, and now the joke is just, dude, enough! And the worst part is that nobody stops him. Patrick does something extremely stupid. Bob pays the consequences, and the universe decides to reward him as if he were a misunderstood genius. That's not humor anymore. That's total frustration. Patrick is the perfect example of what happens when you exaggerate a single trait until it becomes unbearable. They stretched the whole "he's dumb" thing so much that they ended up creating a character that's not funny. He's really annoying now, and even so, he's still there swimming around with no consequences. Scrappy, and to top it all off, Scrappy-Doo. For years, he was the most hated character in animation, and that's no exaggeration. The most ironic thing is that Scrappy was born out of good intentions, because Hanna-Barbera said the formula already feels old. We need to modernize Scooby-Doo, and their brilliant idea was to add a small, loud, hyperactive dog who was convinced he was the main character, even though nobody asked for it. Finally, Scrappy and Scooby-Doo arrive, and everyone said, "Is that it?" Why didn't people want a dog with a hero complex? Did they want the mystery gang or Scrappy? He would yell, "Go where he shouldn't," and disrupt everything. He thought he was brave without actually being brave, and he had that annoying kid energy that nobody invited to the party, but he still showed up and started yelling. But here's the interesting part. Instead of ignoring him, pop culture turned him into a meme, so much so that he ended up being the villain in the first live-action movie. Then, Mysterio at Your Service makes fun of him, and even Cartoon Network makes inside jokes about how hated he is. And with this, we wrap up the list of the most hated characters in animation. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and comment. Which character do you hate? See you in the next video.